Welcome to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, where we do our best to give you useful information in 20 minutes or less. Now, here's your host, five-time Voice Arts Awards nominee, David Brower.
Thanks, Alan. This is David Brower with our special guest on your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, Dr. Joye Pugh from Douglas, Georgia. And Dr. Pugh is an alumnus of South Georgia College, Valdosta State College, Nova University, where she received her doctorate in education. Her background involves working as a researcher, counselor, mental retardation professional, human services director, and consultant. She has appeared in several television documentaries in the History Channel concerning end times. And even way back in the day, she was chosen by Eunice Kennedy Shriver to serve on the International Special Olympics Task Force. And now for over 40 years, even though she doesn't look 40, Dr. Pugh has been involved in researching biblical prophecy. She consults with people from all around the world on various issues, current events involving science and religion. She also serves as a consultant in education with the Mutual UFO Network regarding the spiritual and religious aspects of paranormal and UFO experiences. I am exhausted. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David, for having me on as your guest today.
You are very welcome. And the other thing is you've written some amazing best-selling books, The Beguiled, Eden to Armageddon, Volumes 1, 2, and 3, Antichrist, the Cloned Image of Jesus Christ, Parables of Joy on a Georgia Farm, Eden, the Knowledge of Good and Evil, 666, Volumes 1 and 2. How did all this come about? Where did you go from Dr. Joye Pugh, Valdosta College, to Special Olympics, to just remarkable career in writing and study?
Well, I started out really in college studying a lot of things that I thought were quite interesting that were about end of days. And so I had a good number of professors who allowed me to do a lot of the papers as a young girl on light and the theory of light, because I felt like that I would see possibility the end of days based on a little dream that I had when I was 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so that kind of led me on the course of this extra information of wanting to know a little bit more about light and the theory of light and Alpha and Omega and end times. And so while I was working under my undergraduate work, I worked with some schizophrenics and things like that and saw some unique kind of things that were going on. And then once I got out of school, I was working with the handicap. And so that's how I got involved with Special Olympics and actually coached and trained a lot of athletes that went to the international Special Olympic Games against like 109 or 110 countries.
Awesome.
So that's how I got involved with Eunice Kennedy Shriver. And so then I was working with the mentally retarded and handicapped and different aspects of mental health and mental retardation, substance abuse, that kind of thing. And I went back and studied for my doctorate. And during that course of time, I met another couple of professors who allowed me to pursue this avenue of end of days, eschatology, theology, and bringing in a lot of different things from physics to cloning to biotechnology to nanotechnology. I mean, I was interested in a lot of fields of study. And because my background had been so diverse in so many things, I saw this pattern developing in the course of what was happening in our world that kind of reminded me specifically of growing up in the church and seeing and hearing about the end of days. Mm-hmm. And so that's what led me to start doing, I guess, the research was the fact that I felt like this little dream that I had when I was 6 that had something to do about the end of time, that it sparked my interest and made me interested in it. And so I pursued that kind of as an undercurrent to the other work that I was actually doing in my studies.
And the other thing is, along the way, I mean, first and foremost, having that dream at 6 and having that hang on to you for so long, if that's not a God thing, honestly, I don't know what is. And secondly, the fact that you would be presented with these professors who would kind of give you carte blanche to study and write about the things that were on your mind. I mean, those kinds of things just don't happen to everybody.
Well, they really don't. And, the educational system has always been a little bit leery about anything in regard to religious aspects unless you are actually in the field of religion and you are studying that in school. Right. They kind of are taboo about it. And I did run into professors where in speech class when I wanted to give like a sermon that I was told not to ever do that again. And so I did encounter a lot of opposition in trying to expand the work that I really wanted to do. And but I was fortunate. Then I had those other professors who said, instead of me writing about how to improve the educational system for, let's say, 12th grade or whatever, they allowed me to say, I want to study and I want to promote this theory of light. What is that? What is this alpha and omega, beginning and end? So that's how my work started for the books that I actually became a writer of.
Wow.
It was from those papers that I put together, and it was wonderful. But like you say, it was really a godsend that they allowed me to pursue an interest that really, I guess you could say, it was educational. Okay, It was in the educational, that I was educating someone about this information, but at the same time, it was so opposite of what everybody else in the classroom was doing.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah.
And my grade was best. My grade was going to be based on it, so it's pretty significant.
Absolutely right, and not everyday conversations, right? When you're going to
yeah.
school, I mean, the student body and people over at the soda shop or whatever. I mean, those conversations were like, "Excuse me, you're doing what?"
Right, because really there was only a couple of books out at that time. Hal Lindsey had done several that I had read, like The Late Great Planet Earth and those kind of books. But at the same time, what I was kind of talking about, there was really, back in the day, in the late 70s, no one was really kind of talking about end of days like you hear today, where you hear a lot more being discussed about the changes in the weather and the sun, moon, and stars and all that.
Right.
So it was an unusual topic for especially a girl.
Well,
to bringing up and bringing to the table. But I am so thankful they did, because really, David, it allowed me a stepping stone into a library of information that really got me started. And now my library is huge, and I, like I say, have opportunities to talk with people all over the world about what I do, and it's really exciting to think that it really started when I was 6 years old in this dream, and it really put me on that course.
Well,
So,
I mean, you go from a dream when you're 6 years old, and then you get to college, and everybody else is talking about Woodstock and
That's right. And Flower Child
and Flower Children and all that, and you're going, "Oh my gosh, let's go over here for a while."
I
Wow.
know, and I was looking at things like perestroika and Reagan and the change in the paradigm shift of the world. I mean, I was looking at things that were like out there that were just not your normal conversations. So
that
it was
so
a little bit
cool.
different.
That is so cool. What a journey, man. What an absolute thrill, and what a journey. And to be able to not only articulate that in book form and have so many books out there, but to share, discuss with people around the world what's going on in your life and your knowledge and how it can affect their lives too, right?
Well, that's the thing, is that when I first started doing this research, it really was for me, because I had these questions that I felt sometimes in conversations with pastors or Sunday school teachers, they could not answer. They were the tough questions, like, who did Cain marry, in the Garden of Eden, and where did the giants come from? There's things that people would say, well, it's not time for us to know, and they would push you off or whatever about the end of days. Well, what does that mean? And who's going to be the great whore, and who's going to be the, the beast, and da-da-da.
Sure.
I really was not afraid to go, okay, there's an answer to this, but it's going to just require me just sitting down and really researching this. So really my work started, truthfully, David, was to answer these questions for me, because I felt the need to want to know them. I didn't want to feel like I was just some grain of sand floating around in the universe, and that when we close our eyes in death, it was over with, because I just didn't feel that way. And so it drove me to really study and do all of this to answer the questions. But interesting enough, now when I do radio shows and stuff, I always tell everybody, I did your homework with this book. I've already done the homework, and I wasn't trying to fool myself. A lot of people write books and they just want to be bestsellers and whatever it says. But I said, this started out with research to answer my question, and I was not out to try to fool me.
Yeah, and if you're
questions.
If you're a junior at Valdosta College, plagiarism is approved.
Oh, that's right. You got to be really, really careful about all these kind of things that you do. But it is true. I mean, when you think about doing the homework, and it took me years to put these books together, because they're all nonfiction. and they're just chock full of like a lot of sciences that really look at the pieces of the puzzle that are all out there that we pass by every day, but because they're disjointed. And I
Hmm.
always think that the fields of study that were set up for us to be able to study make us focus on one area.
Yes.
You're really good at, let's say, playing a guitar, but nothing else. And
Right.
you're really good at doing math of this, or you're really good as a doctor of fixing an ankle, but you don't see the bigger picture because you've got blinders on because you're so focused on this one thing. And if you can disjoint everybody, then nobody sees a pattern. And I'm thankful that as a child, I could see patterns in things. My mother said,
Wow.
oh my gosh, she said, if you could ask 1,000 more questions, because one question would lead to another, and then I can see that in this aspect or this field of study. So
What a
that's
gift.
why that really is. It's a wonderful thing to be able to see it in all fields of study, and then bring all those fields of study together in these books, and really connect science and religion. I mean, it was kind of unheard of because people said, "Oh my gosh, you're doing a book about science and religion."
Well, it's
Those two things
totally,
are
totally unheard of. I mean, I had a pastor once, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, and he did a sermon on science and religion, and everybody kind of sat up and go, what? 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 What is that? That's no, we don't talk about that. And it was so fascinating. And obviously it was just a drop in the bucket to the kinds of things that you do. But I think one of the advantages, if I heard you correctly, is that you weren't able to run into people who could answer the questions,
That's right. And
right?
I really was trying. I mean, I was
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
trying to find the answers myself from people that I felt had the focus on their fields and these fields of study. And then when I saw that there was so much disjointedness, and they could, and if I asked a question over here that was, let's say, a correlation to this over here that was in their field of study, they couldn't even grasp it because they didn't know anything about this other field of study.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so that is, oh my gosh, I was like, help me figure this out. And I would just
Wow.
spend hours, into late nights. I mean, some nights I didn't even sleep when I would be so engrossed and have all these different books out. Like I'm saying, like I might have a book of archaeology, I might have a book of geography, I might have a book of, ancient history and the Bible and all these books laying out with all these little pieces. And I would be like, oh my gosh, this all makes sense, and they're all
Wow.
connected. So it would sometimes be it would be like those aha moments when you would feel like, oh my gosh, this is what it means, or
Yeah.
you were questioning maybe how to explain a certain scripture,
Right.
and you break it down into like Greek or Hebrew and see a different word because of the translations in the Bible, from Hebrew and Greek to
Yeah.
English, you lose a
Yep.
lot of translation.
You do.
And when you would break it down, it would be like, oh, no, I always thought it meant this, but this is what it meant. So there was a lot of aha moments in the research
Fascinating.
that I do, which is sometimes it's very awe-inspiring, and then sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, this means this and this and this and this, and then it's like a whole different ball game. So
Well, yeah, and if I share this with people, they're going to think I'm a
oh
ouch,
wow,
right? Way out
that,
there.
yes, and when I first started talking about cloning, that was like, oh, taboo. That's like Star
Right.
Trek.
Right,
And
right,
I'm
right.
like, but let me show you the historical record. It's been going on since the 1800s. They cloned these frogs, da da da. And so people were like, oh, really? I thought that Dolly was the first person or first thing that was cloned, was
Oh my
a
gosh,
sheep.
no.
And
Oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
no, 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 this is a perfection when it reaches the public on
Right?
NBC, right there, you already know it's being worked on for years and years
Forever.
before it ever got to that
Yeah,
point.
forever.
So I
So
did have a little ridicule, some of the things that I was already a little bit ahead of what was being talked about, in the
good.
real
That's
world.
good. That's absolutely good. I mean, if they I think ridicule really at the end of the day becomes a challenge, right? I mean, they ridicule you because they don't know what they don't know. And so if they're able to just give you 5 minutes to go, "Oh, that's what that means? Seriously?" right?
Right. It was one of those things where, like, when I was talking about UFOs and things of that nature, and going back and showing that, there's pictures of these things back in the pyramid, and there's pictures in Leonardo da Vinci's paintings,
You
and
bet.
I was bringing up all the stuff that's involved in the Bible, and which talks about different kinds of things, and then today we have our Navy and our major airplane pilots are saying every day we're seeing these weird things. We don't know what they are. We can't explain them. And so then it becomes a common discussion. Well, then where people were just thinking it was nothing, or you were out there in left field, all of a sudden they're calling me going, "Hey, I think I saw something. What
Well,
do you think this
yeah.
was?" And so it's a whole different science behind it now
Well,
compared to,
and
stupid.
and so many people think the conversation stopped in Roswell.
Oh, yes. And now,
You know?
now they're finding out, hey, our military has been keeping up with these, and now they're every day. And now they're
Every
getting a little
day.
concerned that they're seeing so many of them, and they don't know what they are, and they really can't protect us from them. I mean, there is a reason for us to be looking at this from a scientific method. And that's
Yeah,
what I
that's
was
right.
doing, way back when I started doing some consulting, because I wanted to get a handle on what was really going on, because of the research that I've done in the demonology aspect of folklore and mythology and exorcisms and of that nature. And then my understanding and studies in the pineal gland and how that can be affected by certain things. I mean, so I could see the UFO phenomena from a different standpoint than just saying I saw something weird in the sky.
Yeah.
I had like all these other fields of study where things were popping up that were not making sense, that I could bring to the table in a discussion in a book.
Well, and some of it, I would think, you would find a piece here and you would find a piece over there, but none of the pieces were put together until you had all these aha moments and are going,
Oh, yes.
well, let's put the puzzle together. Come on, right?
Right. And sometimes it would be an answer that would absolutely kind of be a little bit shocking.
Mm-hmm.
There were some things that I really was really kind of shocked about, that I was able to kind of uncover and discover. And then once I began going into fields of study that people were having these questions, and I started saying, "Hey, have you ever thought about that this and this and this?" If they had an open mind, and that's the thing, is
That's
that
the
if you're
thing.
so closed-minded that you don't want to see anything, okay, you're not going to see anything. But if you're open-minded enough to really sit down and look at the it's kind of like being on a jury and you're
Mm-hmm.
listening to what the lawyers are giving you as evidence.
Right.
But when you can give one piece of evidence, but then when you can give 500 pieces of evidence, then you've got to go, well, that can't be a coincidence. I mean,
No.
what's the odds of that?
And when they all fit together so perfectly.
That's right. And it's
Right?
like being on a jury.
Yeah.
When it's so perfect, then you pretty well can come to the terms that it must be true or false.
Right.
Based on the amount of significance behind it, the probability significance. I mean, if you put it on a statistical level, then you've got to stop and say it was a scientific method is proving that this has got to be this, this, and this.
Yeah.
So that's where my work kind of takes everybody to, is to be able to show these things that are unusual and strange and whatever, that there's something behind it, and then there's some science that actually will accommodate it to literally not make it maybe conspiracy, but make it more credible.
Yeah,
And
there you go.
that's what I'm after, is
That's
the
your goal.
credibility
Yeah.
and what I'm trying to bring to the table to discuss, because I do think that the days in which we are living are very, very strange. I mean, I've been on this earth, I'm 62 years old, and I've been on this earth 62 years, and I can honestly say the things that are happening in the little area that I live, when I've lived in this area for those numbers of years, what I'm seeing and the changes in the earth and everything around us is nothing like it was when I was a little girl. And so when I correlate that back to scripture or whatever, it's kind of like you better stand to attention and not be just sleeping through all of this.
We hope you've enjoyed part one of our interview with Dr. Joye Pugh.
Listen to Your 20-Minute Podcast with David Brower on the go. Downloads are available on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, any podcast app, and on our website at davidbrowervo.com/Your 20-Minute Podcast. Until next time, thank you for listening.